my name's Gavin Willis. I'm the Executive Director for the Ag Water Board of Whatcom County. I'm just going to walk you through a brief summary of the adjudication process generally. Most of you are probably familiar with some of this information, but on the chance that there's a few folks in the crowd who this is entirely new to, I wanted to give you a brief update there. And then we'll get you up to date on where we are in the legal process, what's been happening lately. I wanted to start with a quick disclaimer that this presentation and kind of all of tonight's presentations are for informational and educational purposes. This isn't legal advice. I'm not an attorney. Ag Water Board cannot provide legal advice to you. I believe only one of our presenters tonight is actually an attorney, but I won't tell you who that is because I don't want to prejudice you against them. So we'll just get into some of the basics here. First of all, what is an adjudication? At its most basic form, an adjudication is a court-administered civil legal process to evaluate water rights. So a couple things to note in that. It is a lawsuit initiated by the Washington Office of the Attorney General, representing the Department of Ecology. And it's a civil proceeding, not criminal, so that changes some of the standards for providing evidence. If you watch like Law and Order or something and you're familiar with the concept of proving something beyond a reasonable doubt, that's not the way that it's going to work in the adjudication. But it's going to be basically a preponderance of evidence. How much evidence can you provide to support the case that you're making? The intent of the adjudication is to resolve conflicts over right to use water, and this is what adjudications are generally used for. Under Washington water law, the water is owned by the public, but you as individuals or businesses can hold a private right to use water. And those rights protect your access to water from new users. So the first people to use water have priority for water use over people who come in and start using water later. In most cases in the Western United States, these laws were designed to encourage settlement of land in the late 1800s. But those laws have persisted until now, so they don't really fit our water use patterns especially well anymore in modern times, but that's kind of what we're stuck with. In the adjudication, all water users, including cities, tribes, farmers, the federal government, well owners, etc., you're all joined to the case. You would have received your summons in the mail, and you'll need to defend your water use. And the important thing to note here is that if you don't file a claim, then a default judgment may be issued against you, and the default judgment in the case of an adjudication would be that you lose your right to use water if you don't file your claim. So that's one thing I really want to emphasize, and I think a lot of the speakers today are going to emphasize. And then adjudications generally are expected to take decades. The last adjudication in Washington State was in the Yakima Basin. That took 43 years to complete that one. There have been advancements made in streamlining the process since then, but a number of factors also make this adjudication more complicated than that Yakima Basin one, including the number of defendants in the case here, the inclusion of groundwater. Yakima was just surface water, and the international basin that our, or the international border that our basin spans. So a couple of questions that come up. One of the most common ones is, why did the state file this lawsuit? Or why are adjudications filed at all? Historically, there's three main goals for an adjudication. The first is to confirm existing water rights. This can take a couple of forms. The first is that for water use that predates Washington's water law, so surface water use that existed before 1917, or groundwater use that existed before 1945, property owners have historically had to file what was called a statement of claim to keep their water use valid after those laws took effect. So if someone was using groundwater in the 1930s and the 1940s, and then in 1945, the Washington State Groundwater Code took effect, then in the years following that, you would have had to fill out, or the property owner would have had to fill out a form stating this is the amount of water that I was using before the law took effect that I'm eligible to continue using. So all of those claims would have been filed with the Department of Ecology, but they were never evaluated in the same way that a new application for a water right might be evaluated. So those claims will be evaluated through the adjudication process. And the second thing that will be evaluated is water rights will be looked at to determine if they've been relinquished. Basic gist of that legal principle is that if you have a right to use water, but you go 5 years without using it, you forfeit that right to use water and it's given to the next person in line. Again, that law came from this idea of settling the lands and encouraging people to develop the lands. It doesn't really fit with our modern use of water, but that's the law that we're working with right now. The second purpose for adjudications is to quantify federal reserved water rights. The US Supreme Court has ruled that anytime the federal government reserves land, they also reserve a water right large enough to serve the purposes that that land was reserved for. So land, for example, that's reserved for a border crossing for a port of entry gets enough water to support U.S. Customs and Border Patrol operations at that location. And land reserved for tribe or tribal government through a treaty with the United States government also reserves enough water for the reservation, which includes domestic supply, irrigation for on-reservation uses, and in some cases, in-stream flow rights to support salmon in the river there. However, state governments in the United States manage water supply, even though federal governments are the ones that reserve those. So the only way that the state government can determine the actual quantity of those water rights generally is through an adjudication or a similar process with the federal government in court. And then the final goal of an adjudication is to create a priority list of water rights. Really, the only end product of an adjudication is a list of all of the rights in the basin listed in order of priority. So the most senior, the oldest water rights at the top, the most junior, the newest water rights at the bottom. And then theoretically, if there's less water available than the total water rights on that list, then water users at the bottom of that list would get shut off to protect the users at the top of the list to ensure that they have their water rights available to them. So how did we get to this point? I've got a brief timeline up here, a few major events. Department of Ecology began evaluating the location for the next adjudication back in 2019. And in February of 2023, they officially announced their intent to file an adjudication for WIRA 1, stands for Water Resource Inventory Area 1, which includes most of the drainages in Whatcom County, primarily the Nooksack Basin and its tributary. In May of 2024, the adjudication was officially filed in Whatcom County Superior Court, and Ecology started sending out initial summons by certified mail in February 2025. So I imagine a lot of you are here tonight because you received those summons in the mail by certified mail a little under a year ago. For those folks who never received that certified mail for whatever reason, maybe you were on vacation, maybe they got your address wrong, they're planning to do another summons, legal summons or service by newspaper publication. As I understand it, that's expected to be published starting next month. And then note that by law, all water users are required to be given at least 1 year from when you are served before you have to file your claim. So that means if you got served by certified mail last year, then your deadline is May 1 of 2026. If you did not get served by certified mail last year and your name is going to be published in the newspaper in the next couple of months, your deadline will be June 1 of 2027. And that's a pretty extensive list. My understanding is it's about 8,500 names that are going to be published in the newspaper in the next couple months for that. So that'll be a lengthy legal section in the paper when that comes out. So for most of you, this is going to be the critical part here to file your claims. And the next number of presentations are going to be designed to help you with that. But you'll need to fill out and file your claims before the deadlines that I mentioned in the last slide. So there's a few ways that you can fill out your claims form. The court has developed what they're calling a guide and file online system that's designed to automatically fill out your form. It goes step by step, asking you a number of questions. If you answer the questions, then it will fill out the form in the correct blanks for you. Kind of similar to how like some basic tax software might work. You answer the questions, it fills in the blanks in the paper, and then you can download that form and submit it. You can also just use the form you received in the mail or download a blank PDF and fill it out that way. You'll then need to file your form with the court. You can either file that online using the court's electronic filing system as a PDF, or you can have a printed paper copy and take it in person to the Whatcom County Courthouse in Bellingham. In both cases, you will need to pay a filing fee to file your claims. That is a requirement in the law. It's a $25 fee for each claim form that you file, plus an additional $1 fee if you file online for credit cards. So you can pay by cash or cashier's check in person, or credit card in person or online. Note that if you're going to file in person, they will not accept personal checks. So just something to be aware of before you make the trip down there. And then after you file your claim form, you're going to want to start to gather supporting evidence. You'll have at least 3 years after your claims filing deadline before you need to file your supporting evidence. So you'll have time to gather that data or evidence, whether that's meter data or power data to show your pump running on your well. Maybe you have historic aerial photos. There's going to be a lot of information in coming presentations about what types of forms that evidence may take. And like I noted earlier, the preponderance of evidence standard for civil cases means that the more evidence you can gather to support the claims you're making, the better. Another potential next step, if you want to follow along with the case, I know this is something that a number of folks are potentially interested in. There's a couple of ways that you can do that. Whatcom County Superior Court publishes the case docket once a month on their website, and that's a list of everything that was filed in the previous month. So I took a look a couple of weeks ago through the January docket. It was 94 pages long, I think. It lists all of the documents, all the attorneys representing parties, all the documents that were filed in hearings, and then a list of everyone who filed their claims in the adjudication. So I think as things pick up, that docket's going to become a pretty big document. But that's potentially a way that you can monitor what's going on in the case. Another thing that you can do is follow along with any court hearings via live stream on the Water Court's YouTube page. You can also attend the court hearings in person. They're generally at the Whatcom County Courthouse, although occasionally they'll have hearings in municipal courts throughout the county. So right now, their hearings are happening once a month on the second Monday of the month is the general update hearing. So if you want to follow along with those, go to YouTube and search for the WCSC Water is the name of the page, and you can subscribe, and then anytime those hearings are happening, you can follow along live. Unfortunately, they are not available for viewing after the hearing ends. So if you want to watch the hearing, you'll have to catch it live. So again, right now, the hearings are generally the second Monday of the month at 9 a.m. on YouTube. So. And then I just want to give you an update of what's been happening on the legal side of things. These hearings have been going on for a while, so I want to give you an idea of what's happened so far in the court process. To date, approximately 2,500 claims have been filed. That's 2,500 people who have a well or some sort of water right have filed their claim in the adjudication. I would estimate that more than 95% of those claims have been for permit exempt domestic use, so that's people who have a well that supplies their home. But there have been a few other uses that have filed their claims as well. That's probably about 10% of the total claims that are expected to be filed. I mentioned the monthly hearings already, second Monday of each month at 9 a.m. At those hearings, the judge deals with any current motions, such as Ecology's motion to serve people by publication in the newspaper that I mentioned earlier, as well as any issue that the steering committee has brought for the judge's consideration. So the steering committee is made up of attorneys and participants in the adjudication representing all types of water users. and they have the job of helping the court in setting rules and procedures for the adjudication to kind of keep things as organized as possible and make sure that everyone's needs are being met. Related to that, one of the things the steering committee is working on right now that's come up in the most recent hearing was a motion to substitute counsel. So this is something that would be used in the case of any property sales during the adjudication. So if you own property and file your claim form in the adjudication, and then later you sell your property, then this form would be filled out as part of that property, so the court knows that you no longer are the one claiming that water. The person who brought the property from you is now making that. I don't believe that that form has been finalized yet, that motion, but it sounds like I expect that to be finalized, and that form will be available in the next couple of months. All right. There have also been a few entities who have asked the court for permission to file motions. Right now, the judge has a stay on anyone filing motions. If you want to file something related to the adjudication, aside from your actual claim, you need the judge's permission. So my organization, the Ag Water Board, requested to file a couple of motions a little over a month ago, including a motion to move the filing deadline back to next year, along with a motion to dismiss the adjudication more generally. A group called Sumas Out also requested to file a number of motions, again, including a motion to move the filing deadline back, as well as a motion to exclude the Sumas Basin from the adjudication. But the judge did dismiss both of those requests to file those motions. He dismissed them without prejudice, so we can bring these motions forward later. But he said that he's not going to consider these big picture issues until after everyone has filed their claims, until after the filing deadline, so that the judge has a better understanding of who's all in the adjudication at that point. That's been the justification that he's used. We'll get to questions later. So after the judge dismissed those motions, Whatcom County, the county government, also filed a motion to set all filing deadlines back to June 1 of 2027, which is that later deadline. The judge is allowing that motion to move forward, but he hasn't decided on it yet. So we won't know whether the May 1 deadline is moved to next year until probably the middle of March. Is probably the earliest that we'll know on that. So my suggestion, not legal advice, would be to continue to prepare to file your claims forms before the May 1 deadline, and keep working on that until you hear otherwise about that deadline. So that is all that I have for you this evening. Again, I think you do have the opportunity. If you have questions, I'm going to be back up at the end to help answer questions that folks might have. So.